we have some questions from our dear friend Rex Basterfield, who was himself briefly involved in Scientology many, many years ago. So when you're ready.
Since you were only ever public, a paying person, were you ever aware of how punishing it would be for Sea Org members? If yes, how did you view it when you were in?
Well, I know I didn't. Nobody, in 9 years, nobody in this organisation complained to me about their treatment. I was aware that members of the Rehabilitation Project Force had to do physical work.
Okay.
But there was a guy called Phil Stannard, who'd I think been L. Ron Hubbard communicator and had a little bit of a thing with the ladies that got him into trouble. He's a lovely guy. It's great fun. But he's the only person who, while he was on the Rehabilitation Project Force, I went up to him, talked to him. I had a conversation with him. It was all fine. I was in a house with a guy called Bob Rosenstein, who again was just a delightful human being. And he was put on the Rehabilitation Project Force. He'd been in the Merchant Navy in America, the American Merchant Navy. And there was a very proper Englishman called John Chadder, who was running the restore the properties, making sure that, so the Rehabilitation Project Force would be part of his thing. But Bob was the estates manager, so his job was to keep all of this coordinated. And there was an unfortunate incident where Chadder ordered, the English gentleman, ordered Bob to do something, and Bob dropped his trousers and said, "Suck this." And it, that meant 2 years in a prison camp, basically. But Bob was, on the few times, maybe once a month when he was allowed out to see his 2-year-old child, I would talk with him because I was living in his house, or the house he rented, and he never complained about it either. So they didn't tell me about that all of them were on rice and beans only diets for months on end. Towards the end, I was told what the pay was for a Guardian's Office staff member, and he was earning £10 a week, and which was rather better then than it would be now. But it's still like maybe 50 quid a week now, and he was trying to run a house and have a wife and a baby doing that. I then found out that the Sea Organisation people were earning £2 a week, and that was a little bit of a. But that was in the last year I was involved. But no, I didn't know what was happening, and when I did find out, the primary reason I think that I spent 12 years of my life trying to help people who'd been affected by Scientology, who felt that they'd been harmed by Scientology, not my decision, theirs. But I think the primary reason was that I felt ashamed that I'd not seen the mistreatment, that I'd had these happy conversations with all of these Sea Organisation members and not realised how tired they were, not realised that as one of them advised me, when your socks get dirty, you can turn them inside out. Because often they didn't get to the laundrette, not knowing that they only had one uniform and they somehow had to keep it. I didn't notice. And I think I paid my dues on that.
Yeah, I think so, just about. Did you experience any high-pressure sales? If yes, how did that make you feel about the organisation?
Hard selling. Yes, I had several experiences of hard selling. I had one day where Kate Bornstein, no, it's not Kate. Kate Bornstein is Al Bornstein changed gender and I think became Kate Bornstein, one of the wonderful advocates for transgender people at the moment. His wife, Becky Bornstein, she sat me down for a couple of hours trying to persuade me to get my mum to sell her house. My mum was involved with Scientology as well, of her own volition. She came in to check that it was all right. I didn't ask her to or anything. She wanted £120,000, and it was kind of water off a duck's back because I had no way of borrowing money. I was a poor artist, and so it didn't matter. The worst one was Lee Lawrence, and who hopefully by now is dead and has not reincarnated, unless possibly as an earwig. No, that's being harsh to earwigs. A registrar, Chris somebody or other, turned up one day at my house with this guy Lee Lawrence, and Lee Lawrence was a money lender. He was a shark, and he basically got a cheque for £7,000 already written in my name, and they spent 13 hours trying to convince me that I ought to accept this loan at 30% per annum repayment.
Okay.
I later dealt with a number of people who'd taken loans from Lee Lawrence, and my advice to them was, don't pay him, because he's not going to take you to court, because what he's doing is criminal. And so I don't know how that worked out, but I did encounter cases over the years where people had borrowed ridiculous amounts of money. I met a man a few years ago who's still paying back, having left several years before. He was working 2 jobs so he could pay back the loans. And one of the loans was towards a new building. This was something that happened when I was involved. You paid through the nose to go to Florida or what have you. But this was a contribution, a donation towards a new building. And I think it was £35,000. And in return, when they built it, he would have a car parking space for all eternity. It left a lot of people stranded, and it left a lot of people in impossible situations. The practice of hard selling, I do talk about it in all the detail you need to know in the booklet Scientology, The Cult of Greed, which is basically a piece of blue sky. Let's sell these people a piece of blue sky was written for people who've been involved with Scientology. I knew that other people might read it, so I tried to make it broadly readable. But my feeling was that if you'd been involved and you found out about this stuff, then you could make a better decision about whether you wanted to carry on doing it. And that's proved to be effective over the years. I think hopefully thousands of people have left or recovered or not become involved as a consequence of that book, which I'm very glad for. But I wrote Scientology, Cult of Greed. It was originally a lecture I gave in St. Petersburg, and which is a wonderful place. I always say that, but it is. It's great. It happened to be sunny as well at the time, and it's probably quite cold most of the time, but it was great. The 3 days I had there. But they'd mistakenly told me that I could give a 2-hour lecture, and then I got there and was told it was going to be 40 minutes. And then we found that the mayor of St. Petersburg was not going to turn up the next day, so I got his slot, and or the head of the Duma in St. Petersburg, whatever he be, the parliament there. So I got to deliver it all, and I sort of went, I should publish this, because it was written for people who'd had no involvement. In fact, largely about 200 people there, mainly Orthodox priests, the occasional psychiatrist and some Protestants as well. So in there I talk about hard sell, and you just have the bare essentials of Hubbard's statements about people being in a hypnotic daze anyway. So you might as well, and it's advanced courses are worth more than college savings or life insurance or a car or a house, because they last for all eternity. Terrible pressure that's put upon people to basically pour money into L. Ron Hubbard's bank account and now David Miscavige's bank account. It's just wrong. Especially as the techniques don't confer, you don't achieve any of the things. You don't become a communication release capable of communicating with anyone on any subject freely. You don't become a problems release capable of finding the source of any problem and solving it. As you go up through all the things you're promised, you most certainly don't achieve any paranormal abilities. If they did, then at this moment the camera would go dead. No, you've had your chance. So thanks very much for helping me get reading out Rex's questions. Thanks to Rex for making the questions. And please, if you have any questions that aren't too personal, obviously, then please stick them in the comments page. The comments page is a good place to do it. And I'll do my best to respond. And that can be about anything that's to do with prevention, recovery, any kind of authoritarian group, any kind of authoritarian relationship, because in the last 36 years, I've not only studied Scientology, I've studied tens of other groups and tried to understand the basis of authoritarian relationships, which you can find out about in my book, Opening Minds. Thank you very much for your time. I hope you have a lovely day, and it's been a great pleasure. I'm John Atack.
I'm Sammy Tack.